Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how I made this double-breasted blazer dress. This video is a request from one of my subscribers. This tutorial is the full cutting and sewing video of how I made this double-breasted blazer dress. I know this is something you'd like to know more about. Please keep on watching and let's get started. If you are yet to subscribe to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you get notified anytime I upload a new video. To my returning subscribers, thank you guys for always tuning in. Thank you for the love and support on my channel. For this dress, I have about 4 yards of Ankara fabric. You can use any fabric of your choice, and I also have about 2 yards of lining. This is the back pattern. I have the shoulder line, the chest line, the waist line, the hip line, and the full length of the dress. Shoulder to the chest line is 9 inches, to the waistline is 16 inches, to the hip line is 24 inches, and to the full length is 34 inches. I am labeling as the back pattern. There is no zip allowance on this pattern because we are drafting a jacket. The first thing I am going to do now is to tighten the center back. On the waistline, I came in by 0.75 and I'm just going to connect to the top and bottom like so. I am shading this part out because I don't need it. I am going to be cutting it out. The next thing is to mark the shoulder measurements divided by 2 plus 0.5 inch seam allowance. I'm going to mark it on the shoulder line and also on the chest line, and I'll connect with a straight line. I always do this always on my channel, and for those that are always watching my tutorials, you already know this process. I'm just repeating this process for the benefit of those that may be watching my channel for the first time. So now for the neck width, I use 3 inches for the neck width and 1 inch for the neck depth. I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slant and I'll connect it to the neck depth. From the shoulder slant, I'll divide what I have left into 2, and from the midpoint, I'll go in by 0.25. I'll go ahead now and mark the bust measurements divided by 4. After marking, I'll connect those 3 points together to form the armhole. I am marking the waist circumference divided by 4 and I'll add 1 inch allowance for that. On the hip line, I'll go ahead and mark the hip measurements divided by 4. The same measurement I marked on the hip line is what I am also going to mark on the full length, and I'm going to connect all those points together. On the waistline, I'll go in with the bust span measurements divided by 2. I'll mark it on the waistline, and on the hip line, I'll go up by 2 inches. That is where I'll mark the bust span measurement, and I'll also come down from the chest line by 1 inch before marking the bust span measurement, and I'm going to connect all those points with a ruler. Next, on the waistline, I'll come out by ½ inch on both sides of the dart line and I'll connect to the top and bottom like so. For this blazer dress, I'll be using a shoulder dart. Now I'll get the midpoint on the shoulder and make a mark there, and I'm just going to connect it straight to the dart line. Now I am going to extend the dart line to the full length line. So I'm going to mark the bust span measurement at the full length and I'm just going to connect it with a straight line. That is all on the back pattern. I'll cut it out now. You can go ahead and label the side back and the center back. This is my front pattern, and the first thing you're going to do is to leave a space of about 6 inches at the top of this pattern and 6 inches by the side before your starting line. So now I have the shoulder line, the chest line, the bust line, the waist line, the hip line, and the full length of the dress. Shoulder to the chest line is 9 inches, to the bust line is 11 inches, to the waist line is 16 inches, to the hip line is 24 inches, and to the full length is 34 inches. My markings is going to start now from the shoulder line. So now I'm marking the shoulder measurements divided by 2, and I'm going to connect with a straight line. Next, I'll mark the neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth of 3 inches, and I'm going to connect with a curve. Next, I'll come down by 1 inch for the shoulder slant and I'll connect it into the neck width. The next thing I'm going to do now is to mark the bust measurements divided by 4. And from the chest line, I'll go up by 3 inches. And from that 3 inches point, I'll come in by 0.75. And I'll connect those 3 points together to form the armhole. On the waistline, I'll go in with the waist circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to add 1 inch allowance for that. On the hip line, I'll mark the hip measurements divided by 4, and that same measurement is what I'm also going to mark on the full length, and I'll connect the points together. I am going in with the bust span measurements divided by 2. I'll mark it on the waistline, and on the hip line I'll go up by 2 inches. That is where I'm going to mark the bust span measurement, and I'm also going to mark it on the bust line, and I'll connect those points together with a straight line. On the waistline, I'll come out by 0.5 on both sides of the dart line, and I'll connect it to the top and bottom. The same shoulder dart we used for the back pattern is what I'm also going to use for this front pattern. So get the midpoint of the shoulder and make a point there. And I am going to connect it to the bust point. I'm going to mark the same bust span measurement at the full length, and I'll connect it to the hip line like so. This is a double-breasted blazer dress, and the first thing you're going to determine is how many inches you want to add to the center front. For this dress, I am going to add 5 inches, and I'll mark it from the waistline. I want the waistline to serve as the break point, so I'm going to mark it from the waistline all the way down, and I'll just connect like you see me doing. So this waistline will serve as the break point. The next thing I'm going to do now is to connect with a straight line from the neck width all the way to the break point. From the neck width, I'm just going to go out by 0.25 and connect it into the same line so that the collar can sit properly on the dress. So now mark the neck width of your back pattern, and you're just going to extend that neck width from the front shoulder. I am going to extend that neck width from the front shoulder in a slant form, just the way you see me doing it with my tape. And from that neck width, you're just going to mark another 0.25 and connect it back into the neckline. Guys, at this point, I didn't know that my camera is not fully capturing the upper part, but I'm just going to try my best to explain what I did there. The next thing I'm going to determine is how wide I want my collar to be, and I am going to mark it in a slant form with my tape. I used 4 inches for my collar width. That is what I marked at the top there that you can't really see, but I only marked the collar width, which is 4 inches. And from the neckline, I'm going to mark my lapel. I'm going to use 3 inches for my lapel from the center line, I mark 3 inches and I'll connect it to the break point with a straight line. So now for the notched collar part, from the neck width there on the lapel, I'm going to come in by 1.5, and that same 1.5 I'm going to mark it in a slant form like you see me doing, and I'm going to connect with a ruler. So from that notched part, I'm just going to connect to the top, to my collar width at the top. I know you can't really see that part clearly, but what I did there is not trust me, with my explanation you are going to get it. That is all for the front pattern. I am going to cut it out now. While cutting, I am going to separate the collar from the dress. So you're just going to cut it out like you see me doing with mine, and you're going to notch the important parts where the collar is going to join to the dress. And you are also going to notch the down part of the collar so that you know that wherever you have the notch on the collar will be attached to the dress. You can go ahead and label your pattern, the center front and the side front, and also the collar. You are going to, this part I'm marking is the folded edge. You are going to cut it on fold. I are going to cut 2 of it on fold, and also for each piece of the pattern you are going to cut 2 pieces. I have transferred the front pattern to fabric here, and I added 1.5 inches for the side joining, and I added ½ inch round the patterns. For the hem, I added 1.5 inches at the hem, but my lining is the same length as the pattern. I cut out facing for the center front while I cut out lining for the side front. I'm going to bring in the back now so that we can see what we have. These are my back pieces, and I have also transferred to fabric, and I have cut out my lining. I added ½ inch allowance to the top, but for the side joining I added 1.5 inches. So in between the sides, I added ½ inch allowance. Also for the down part, I added 1.5 inches for hemming, but my lining is 1.5 inches shorter than the mean fabric. I am going to separate the pattern from the fabric now so that we can pin each pieces together exactly the way I am going to stitch. Now I am going to join the lining and the main fabric separately. So for the main piece, I'll join the side back to the center back. At the end of the day, for the main fabric for the back, I am going to be having 4 pieces, and also for the lining I am going to have 4 pieces. So join the side back to the center back. Do the same thing for the main fabric and the lining. So this is what I am going to do now. I'm just going to pin each of the pieces together. This is for the front. I am going to remove the paper now, and I am going to pin the side front to the center front, fabric to fabric, lining to lining. This is exactly what I am going to do. After pinning, before I go over to stitch, I am going to add interfacing to the facing. I am going to join all the pieces with ½ inch seam allowance, so don't use more than the allowance you added to the fabric. I have also transferred the collar to fabric, and the part I told you to cut on fold, this is it here, and I have cut it out on fold, and I cut 2 pieces for this collar. So I'm just going to transfer the notch I have on the pattern to the fabric, and I'm going to remove the pattern. I'll be adding interfacing to one part of the collar. I'm not going to add it to the 2 pieces, just one. These are my front pieces after joining, and this is what we have. I went ahead to iron the seams flat. So do the same thing to yours. Please make sure that you iron the seams flat after joining, and this is what I have. I have also done the same thing to my lining piece, and this is what I have also. This is what the back is looking like now, and I've also ironed the seams flat. The same thing I did to the main fabric is what I also did to the lining. So go ahead and iron all your seams flat. If not, it will not lay properly. Right now, I am going to place the front on the back, and I'm going to join on the shoulder. I'm going to join the main fabric separately, and I'm going to join the lining separately. So this is the main fabric I have on the table, and I'm going to join the back and the front together on the shoulder. After joining the shoulder, I'm also going to join the sides. Remember, I added 1.5 inch allowance to the side joining, but right now when I go over to the sewing machine, I am only going to use 1 inch allowance to join, because when you're sewing a blazer, you need a little bit of ease on a blazer. It can't be as fitted as a normal dress, so you need a little bit of ease. I am done joining the main fabric here, the front and the back together, and this is what I have. I went ahead to iron the side joining flats. Okay, this is the main fabric. I'm going to bring the lining here now. So this is my lining piece, and I've also joined it on the side together and the shoulder, and this is what I have. The next thing I'm going to do now is to attach the collar. So just the same way we did fabric to fabric, lining to lining, is what we're also going to do to the collar piece. So I'm going to attach the collar lining to the lining of the dress, and I'm going to attach the main collar to the main dress. You are going to notch the center of the collar, and you are going to match that center to the center back and pin it together. After pinning the center back, you are going to pin the collar around the neckline till you get to that part you notched on the dress. You are going to stop at that part you notched on the dress on both sides of the front. You are going to stop on the part you notched on the dress. That is why it is important to notch the part where the collar stopped on the pattern. Take your time to pin it round so that when you go over to the sewing machine, you are just going to stitch it round. Whatever process I'm doing to this lining is the same thing I'm also going to repeat on the main fabric. This is for the main dress, and I'm just going to attach the main collar to the dress. Notch the center of the collar and attach it to the center back. And I'm just going to pin it round the collar till I get to that point I notched on the dress. That point I notched on the dress is where the collar will stop on both sides of the center front. You are going to pin the collar round, and when you go over to the sewing machine, you are going to stitch slowly. Don't rush this part, you're just going to stitch slowly. I won't say this part is very easy to stitch, you just have to be patient and stitch it round. This is after I was done with the lining part, and you can see that I have attached the collar to the lining. Now you are going to notch round the seam. Notch closely to the seam so that the collar relaxes well on the neckline. After notching, I'm just going to set it aside and bring the main fabric. I am just going to repeat the same process I did with the lining. I am going to notch the seam around the collar. so that it relaxes well on the neckline. After notching, I am just going to set it aside so that we can work on the sleeve. For this jacket dress, I'll be using a two-piece sleeve. I'm not going to use the regular basic sleeve. It is fine if you want to use your basic sleeve. It is still going to be okay. So I'm going to put out the tutorial on how to cut this two-piece sleeve in a different video. I'm not going to include how I cut out the sleeve in this video because it is going to make the video too long. I'm going to upload the video on how to cut this two-piece sleeve after I have uploaded this particular video. So guys, watch out for it so that you can know how I cut out my sleeve. For each of the sleeve patterns, I cut out 2 pieces each for the main fabric, and I also cut out 2 pieces each for the lining. That means for the main fabric we are going to have 4 pieces for main fabric and 4 pieces for lining. In other words, 2 pieces for main fabric, 2 pieces for lining for one sleeve. Now you can see that the lining is 1 inch shorter than the main fabric. I am going to pin each of the pieces exactly the way I am going to stitch it so that we can have one piece for the sleeve. So by the time you watch the video on how I cut out the sleeve, you are going to understand exactly what I am doing here. I am just trying to pin each of the pieces together so that I can have one piece of sleeve by the time I am done stitching. That is what I am doing here. Whatever process I do to the main sleeve, I am going to do the same thing to the lining. I am done stitching here, and this is what I have. You can go ahead and iron all the seams open here. So you can go ahead and iron first before you attach it to the sleeves. But this is mine. I have not ironed yet. I just want you to see it while I turn it out. So this is what I have. I am going to fix it to the dress now. You are going to fix the main sleeve to the main dress, and you are going to fix the lining of the sleeve to the lining of the dress. So you are just going to go ahead and stitch around the armhole. Do it for both sleeves, and I'm still going to repeat the same process for the lining. Please make sure that the side joining is matching the side joining of the dress. The side joining on the sleeve is also matching the side joining on the dress. I am going to use 1/2 inch seam allowance to stitch around the armhole for the main fabric. Make sure that whatever allowance you use to stitch around the armhole for the main fabric is what you are also going to use for the lining piece. Make sure that all the seam allowance corresponds. I am done joining here, and this is what I have. So at this point you can go ahead and press everything well, both the lining and the main fabric. You can press it properly so that everything stays nice and flat. But right now I am just going to go ahead now and join the main fabric to the lining. Place the lining on the main fabric like you see me doing, and you're just going to pin around the entire dress. So just make sure that all the points where you have a joining, the joining on the lining matches with that of the main fabric. At every point you have a joining, make sure that the joining matches on the main fabric and also on the lining. This is what you are going to make sure that you do. From this part that I am pinning now, you can see that I am making sure that the joining on the lining matches that of the main fabric. So just do it round the entire dress. You're going to pin it round like that so that you can make sure that everything matches up perfectly. And I'm just going to use 1/2 inch seam allowance to stitch round the entire dress. I recommend that you stitch the bottom part of the dress first. This part I am showing you. Then you now start from the collar all the way to the end of the collar, and then from that point you are going to take it from this part all the way to the down part. I am done stitching here, and I'm just going to notch the important part, especially on the collar. Where you have any corner on the collar part, you are going to notch it well. Just notch it close to the seam. Don't cut the seam open, please. Just notch it close to the seam and trim out any point that you think will be bulky by the time you turn it inside out. You will notice that everything is closed on this entire dress. There is no space that we can use to turn our dress inside out. I am going to open one part of the center back a little bit. After opening, I have about 7 inches there, and I'm just going to use that space to turn it inside out so that we can see what the dress is looking like now. You're just going to make sure that you push out all the corners. I'm going to use my screwdriver to push out all the corners that are supposed to be out, so that by the time I iron it, it is going to stay flat and nice. Just make sure that you push out all the corners. And at the end of the day, this is what we have on our dress. I have not closed the hem of the sleeve. I just want us to bring out the dress so that we can see what we have first. Then I'm going to turn it back again to the wrong side so that we can finish up with the hem of the sleeve. I have turned it to the wrong side now. I am just going to match up all the joining you have on the sleeve. Match it up on the main fabric and match it up on the lining and pin it together. The two joining you have on the sleeve, you're going to match each of the points correctly with the lining. Just match it and pin it like you see me doing with mine. Make sure that the side joining of the sleeve of the main fabric of the sleeve corresponds with that of the lining. Don't mix up the sides together. Match it up correctly, and I'm just going to go ahead and stitch around it with 1/2 inch allowance. I'm going to do the same thing to the other sleeve. This is after I was done with the sleeve part, and this is what it is looking like. Now I am just going to turn it to the right side. I am done turning to the right side now, and this is all on this dress. I am going to go ahead and iron it properly. You're going to press it well so that everything stays nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and press it well. After pressing, I'm going to show you the finished look. But before pressing, guys, bring out all the corners. You can use your screwdriver to push out all the corners on the dress. And the space we opened earlier on the center back on the lining, I'm just going to use my needle and thread to just close it. I'm going to use a needle and thread to stitch it there, just to close that space we have. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment. And if you are yet to subscribe to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and please turn on your notification bell so you get notified anytime I upload a new video. Guys, please follow me on Instagram at stitchedbyst. You can send a DM on Instagram to suggest the video you want me to make on my channel. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.